Ask you to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Weibel, our Vice President, will lead us, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd just like to remind everyone of procedure for tonight. This is a budget workshop, and Mr. Cowan is going to review our finances to the best of what we know today before our state budget has been enacted on. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go into our regular business, and then there'll be an opportunity for you during public participation to ask any questions or voice your concerns of anything you may have. I will assure you of one thing. The board has made no decision. We feel that there are still many unanswered questions, and we are still looking for answers if they're even available. And we will inform the community when and if a decision is going to be made in regards to reconfiguration for next year. So that's where we are. I think there was a message or a misunderstanding that we were going to vote on this tonight, and we took a consensus, and with the administration, I'm not sure that we're ready to make that decision, so that won't happen tonight. Okay, is that fairly clear? Clear enough? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Staten, we'll turn it over to you at this point.
Sure, and I will in turn turn it over to Mr. Cowan for the initial budget workshop for.
Board members would like to take a seat so they can see the screen. You're welcome to. I'm going to try to share this so that when it does stream, the people at home will be able to view this as well. Likely, I will not keep pace with my advancement of this screen, so I'm going to give it to Mr. State. Try to keep working when I do it, please. I should try both. I'll probably mess both. So tonight we'll take our first look at the budget for 26-27. Just an overall look at our expenditures, the revenues that we anticipate. Not great news on that front. And where we are at this point in time, as Mr. Iscomini had said, Mr. McCarron had said, there is not a state budget. However, we're not expecting great improvement from what the governor has included in her original budget in mid-January. So with that, we'll jump right into numbers, I guess. Here is a first look at the 26-27 on the left-hand side proposed budget. In the categories that are shown each year, you can see salaries are actually pretty flat from this year to next. That has to do primarily with, we have 4 teachers retiring this year, so we're planning to replace 3 of them. We're looking to reduce 1 teaching position in 26-27 just based on enrollment in the elementary school. And we're also looking at, I'll be retiring, consolidating one of the administrative positions, reduce that by 1 position as well. So with the breakage from the retirees that are being replaced, 1 not, as well as the administrator and another, there is a non-instructional person being replaced, so there's some savings there. You can see the actual or the expected increase for salaries is only up $58,000 or about 0.5%. Everybody doesn't get 0.5% raise, it's usually between 3 and 4% based on the contracts that we have with the teachers, administrators, and our SRP unit. Where you can see the increases are the next 2 lines, benefits. Benefits are up pretty significantly. If you participated in our discussions last year, our health insurance increased by 12% for 25-26, the year that we are in now. We had some pretty significant losses to the consortium over the last few years. We're recovering from that, but still the projection is from our consultants that the health insurance increase will be about 10% for 26-27. The other significant increase on the benefit side is the pension contribution for the employee retirement system is also going up between 9 and 11%, depending on the tier that they're in. So let's use 10% for the increase there as well. If there are questions as I'm going through this, certainly just interrupt me, audience as well as the Board of Education. BOCES, we had gotten away with that number staying pretty level for a couple of years, primarily as our special education numbers stayed stable, even declined a little bit for a few years. Unfortunately, in this year, 25-26, we've seen an increase to that population, and the placements that we've had to, send to BOCES. So that's catching up with us this year, 25-26, and you'll see that when I show you our fund balance projection. But to account for that in 26-27, we need to, budget an increase there of almost 10% as well. So primarily the increase there is due to additional placements, of special education students at BOCES. BOCES, as is the case for all educational communities, it seems, has a difficult time filling their staffing placements. So they're paying people more than they have in the past. When they pay people more, that is passed on to the school districts. This increase projects a 5% across the board rate increase for most of the programs for BOCES. I don't even believe that that will be enough in some cases for their rates when I get them, which will be, I believe, this Friday. You know that they have a board meeting tomorrow night? Yes. I think the board of BOCES will approve theirs tomorrow, and then the administration there will be free to send that information to the school districts. You can see the increases in those two lines. Contractual supplies and equipment, not much of an increase at all there. The only reason there's not much of an increase there is things are going to be tough. And I think we need to go in with a mindset tomorrow, and when the school year starts for 26-27, that you don't buy anything if you don't need it. We're going to be basically an austerity budget in 26-27. Keep the buildings clean, keep the kids safe, keep the programs running, but we don't have a lot of extra money. So we've got to live with what we've got. A lot of teachers are very proactive in getting grants. There's some programs that will certainly continue. We'll continue as much of the co-curricular and athletic programs as we have, as long as there's student interest. But we're going to try to run things in these areas as much on a shoestring budget as we can. When I say that, we have the $50,000 for equipment. That is often one of the first items that is eliminated from a budget. It wouldn't shock me if it is at some point. It is certainly a need each year to replace some of our equipment in the O&M, in the instructional areas. So I'd like to hold on to a bit of that, but that will be decided as this budget process progresses. That met with Donegan, our financial advisors this morning, reviewed the information with them. So that number stays pretty flat for 26-27. And that factors into our tax cap calculation as well. And lastly, athletics and co-curricular, pretty substantial increase. Our athletic director has told me that the referees and umpires have reached an agreement with a 17% increase for their fees for the games that they officiate for 26-27. Just the overall increases to our participation in our programs drives that up. It's a huge dollar amount, for $46,000 or 12%. So you can see a couple of major areas for increases on our expenditure side. Other areas are relatively flat. Any questions on the expenditures?
I just want to try to put this in perspective if I could. So, Mr. Collin, where do we typically, when we start the budget workshop, how big is that typical gap when we start discussing budget for the following school year?
It varies from year to year. I'll tell you, I believe last year was $390,000. Stealing my thunder because I haven't told you yet this year, but we will.
Charlie, just a quick question. Yes. I've had people reach out to me and maybe our friends at home on YouTube, folks here. Explain the difference between what was voted on in December versus this. So yes, the capital project monies versus this.
Okay. So capital projects are every so often, right? This isn't every year. This is the annual operating budget for the school district, voted on every May. Last time that we had a capital project was December of 2021, I believe. And then every 4 to 5 years, we try to, there are certainly capital needs for a campus of this size. So December of 25, we voted again on a $15.7 million capital project addressing infrastructure needs. There's some wants and other items included in that $15 million, but that basically is separate. We will fund that over a 15-year period. That factors into that debt service line. And that's what we work with our financial advisors to try to keep the cost of those capital projects matched up against the building aid that we receive from New York State so that it does not significantly impact our tax cap or tax levy from year to year.
And that 88% of that money from this is the state pays us back for that.
Yeah,
right?
We receive building aids about 88%. And again, that's exactly what we try to do. Is like we can see when debt and when aid is falling off. rather than let that fall off and say, okay, we can reduce taxes by 3% this year. And then we'll need a new project 2 years from now, so we'll increase taxes by 11% or 6% or 8%, you know, which they'll sell. 3% reductions are not. Keeping it closer to flat is what we try to do to keep people's taxes stable, minimal increases or increases within the tax levy limit. And provide the needs that we have for capital projects.
And Charlie, also one additional thing, because I was asked this, if we have money left over, we cannot allocate it to any one of these buckets. It specifically has to be allocated for infrastructure, et cetera.
It does, yes. I'll have to go to capital project needs. If there were to be money left over at the very end, we can always continue to do smaller projects until it is gone. Or if the decision is, okay, we're gonna put it into debt service and we can use it to retire debt over a period of time. But it's not like, well, we spent 10 million, we can throw 5 million in, we cannot do that.
It's like the elevator's broken or, you know, the boiler is the problem with the boiler, that's the type of situation. You can use leftover.
We could actually use some of this money for those capital needs, yes. So $28.5 million, basically 4.8% increase to our expenditures, budget to budget from this year to next. So how do we realize $28.5 million of revenues? The sources of revenues for school districts are pretty limited. Most of ours comes from New York State, nearly 60%. You can see the number there, $16 million, up from about $238,000 from this year's budgeted amount. The governor's proposal for 26-27 is $16,025,000. That includes money for UPK, which is actually separate from our general fund budget. So the 16 million, unfortunately, is a pretty aggressive starting number. You know, there may be some additional money available once the budget is adopted by New York State. I don't anticipate us receiving any more than $16 million from New York State for a general fund in 2026-27. Another area, other revenues. Usually that stays pretty flat, but there have been some things happening in recent years. Other revenues, interest income reached about $290,000 in 24-25, 25-26, we're still $230,000, but it's starting to decline based on interest rates for our savings, right? We were up as high as 5.5%. We're now at 3.5% that we're getting on our savings today. So there's some reductions there, as well as BOCES has changed the way that they provide a refund to us. Typically, they will collect money from us. If we tell them we're sending 10 kids to BOCES for special education, they'll charge us for those 10 kids throughout the year. If only 7 end up going, they'll give us that money back the next year. Now they're saying, no, we're going to reconcile things as the year goes on. Last year, our BOCES refund was $520,000. This year, our BOCES refund was $218,000. So based on the process of how they're doing that, they're giving us money back in the current year, but we've typically budgeted $300,000 as a BOCES refund. That's going to be reduced to $200,000 for 26-27. Continuing to appropriate the same amount of fund balance at this point in time. You know, we've got some money in fund balance. I do anticipate that we'll start to dip into that this year, 25-26. So we've got to be careful that we don't rely on that too heavily. And the last line item is just the plug number, if you will, for the tax levy at this point in time. To balance, to get $28.5 million of revenue, the tax levy would have to go up 14%, $10.6 million of taxes. Obviously, that's not a number that we would, that I would ask that question. Is that a number that the board would present with? No. Okay. So with that, we have a tax cap of $9,572,000 down there at the bottom. There's where our gap is to start this year. $10,006,000 is what we would need to balance this budget. If we stay at our tax cap $9,572,000, we've got to find $1,031,000 between now and when the board will adopt this in early April, usually to present to the public for vote in May. A tough spot, as Mr. Staten had asked earlier. Where does this normally stand? There are some years when it's been the high hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe it touched $1 million in the past. Last year, I said it was about $390,000. One of the things that in recent years, we've known most of our retirements is on the instructional side. Based on the contract agreement a few years ago, we know we have these 4 teachers that are going to retire at the end of this year already. So sometimes that's not factored in when the first budget is presented. Those things are already factored in this budget. They were last year. I guess this is the last year that we will have that information. So next year we will start without knowing the retirees. But some of the things that are positive surprises as we progress from here forward are already known. And that makes that $1 million that much more of a real gap for 26, 27. Who do we blame for this? I don't know. Nobody can be blamed, but we like to point out that the state certainly has not kept pace with what the increases of expenditures are for school districts, and particularly in Sequoia's case. From 2021 through 23-24, you can see 3%, 3.58% increases to our foundation aid. Our foundation aid is our single biggest piece. It's a little over $9 million. $9.6 million that we receive in foundation aid right now. If that 3% trajectory continued for the last 3 years, for 26-27, we'd have been at $10.3 million. Unfortunately, the governor has said, we've got to slow down the monies that we're giving to school districts. There is a foundation formula. I'll show you on the next slide. That basically says this is what a school district should get based on that formula. Is it a good formula? Most would argue no. It's been around since 2007, 2008. It uses data from 2000, 2010. So the formula is questionable, but it is the formula. So she is saying we've got to start to get school districts back closer to where they are. Nothing for 24-25. We received a 2% increase this year. Next year, her proposal is a 1% increase. You can see the difference between the 1%, 9.7, and if we stayed on a 3% trajectory, would be about 600,000. That $1 million gap would be closer to 400,000, and obviously a much more attainable number. But what is that formula? That formula says, to point, you have been on Save Harmless for a number of years. The formula says this year that we're in 25-26, you should be receiving $8,971,000. We are receiving $9,621,000. So for every argument that we say the formula is wrong, the state is not keeping up with what our school district needs, the pushback is there was a formula that was determined and implemented in 2007, 2008 for the first time that funded districts very well at that point in time. I will say when that first came out, it's like, this is 1 year that the budget will be easy to manage for most school districts, at least for the district that I was in. It's stayed the same. Components of the formula have not been updated. We are on St. Harmless. We get that 1, 2, whatever is at the whim of the governor or perhaps the legislator on what is negotiated. But for this year, we're getting $650,000 more than what the formula says. And the governor is pushing back and saying, I think last year, you may recall her comment was, we're paying for a lot of empty seats in school districts. We've got to stop doing that. She had a commission to do some studies. That commission did not do a lot to improve the formula or make any recommendations that were overly favorable to school districts. So we're not seeing a lot of movement to our foundation aid formula. So if we can't rely on the state, how do we weather the storm? One way is we dip into our fund balance. We have not had to do that in recent years, mostly because of what occurred with funding from the federal government when subsequent to the pandemic. And you can see that our fund balance has grown in recent years. Most of that was planned. When we received federal money, the Board of Education, we sat here and we had a plan. We're going to hire these people. We're going to use money for these programs, but we're also going to build our fund balance so that we can make this last for a period of time. And we've been able to do that. The funding from the COVID era ended in 2024-25. This is the first year that we stand alone without any of that money. And you can see that for 25-26, the year that we are in now, we're actually projecting a use or dipping into that fund balance for the first time in a period of years. You can see my expectation is between $300,000 and $400,000. I'm hoping to improve upon that, but at this moment in time, it's looking like a pretty substantial use of our fund balance. Fund balance that started the year at about $3.7 million.
Charlie,
Yes.
that 300,000, is that reflected in the $1 million gap? Or is that gonna come from that?
This is going to be realized this year, so we're going to, I expect, lose close to $1 million, close to $300,000 this year, maybe $400,000. That's what that's reflecting. Projections from today going forward. So I'm rolling over budget saying, okay. I don't want to start the year with a $300,000 or $400,000 deficit. Now, we do appropriate over $1 million of fund balance. Appropriating and using are two different things. Some people say you appropriated your fund balance, you appropriated $1 million, you only used 400,000, you did better than budget. As a business person, I would say if you're losing $400,000, it doesn't matter what your budget says, you're not doing very good. So that's the thing that we have to keep in mind. I'm hoping that I've addressed that, so that $1 million gap, if we are able to reconcile that with real savings and not just saying, okay, we've got some money in fund balance, so we'll grab it. If we do that, then we're gonna have lost. If we say we're gonna reduce costs in these areas and they really occur, then we can hopefully get back to closer to a balanced budget for 26, 27. Question in the back.
Right, I think it's the same question. You said it was a 1.3 million gap, right, previous slide. The 300 that's coming out here, is that right, it's down or what?
No, so we're gonna go back a slide, 2 slides. This one?
Yeah. I was wondering.
Yeah, so about $1 million gap. As we roll into 26, 27. What will that really be when we turn the page July 1st? Unsure at this point in time. My hope is that the Board of Education administration get together and say, we need to look at how we can cut about $1 million, or we need to find revenues. I don't see us finding revenues.
Are you proposing that 300,000 covers a third of that?
No, not at all. So, and the 300,000 is this year that we will end June 30th, 2020.
We already took it out.
Yeah, June 30th, 2026. So when this year ends, if things continue, we've had some increased costs for student programs, primarily special education, whatever the case may be, but though we went into the year hoping not to dip into our fund balance, at this point in time, I anticipate that we will, and it will cost us, we will be in the red about $300,000 for 25, 26. And we hope to not start there in 26, 27. So there's my projection. Our fund balance, June 30th, 2025 was $3,694,000. If we lose $390,000 or thereabouts this year, we'll be down to $3.3 million. As we talked about in the past, a decent number, but you compare us to other school districts. Here's where Sequoia is in red as a percentage of our budget. Our fund balance, and our fund balance includes all of our reserves. There's an unappropriated fund balance that's allowed to be at about 4%, but then we have some reserves to protect some of that money for retirement system contributions, retiree incentive payments, those types of things. So ours is about 13.5%. You take 14 school districts, the 12 components of OHM BOCES, plus our neighbors, Frankfurt, Schuyler, and Mount Markham School District. And you can see that the high is close to 49% of their budget they have in the bank. They'll be able to weather a few more storms than the districts that are closer to the left side of this chart. I talked about the gap, and our gap being over $1 million if we are, if we go out at the tax cap. Our tax cap for 26, 27 would be 2.94% based on the information that we have. I don't expect that to change. Again, I met with Bernie Downing's office this morning and reviewed all of the numbers. I think that's a pretty good number at this point in time. You can see what the increases have been over the past decade. 2 highlighted in green are years where the district did go out. It did exceed the cap and required 60% approval from the community. 2% or limit was a 0.19% that year. The board said, and 0.19% isn't a lot of money. They went to the 2% number, required to 60%. And then in 24, 25, when most of that COVID money left us to maintain some of those remedial positions, I believe there's 3 of them all together. The board proposed and the community supported the increase of 5.5%, which was approved. This year, it was 2.38%. Next year, staying at the cap would be 2.94%. Couple of other things that we do each year typically. We have a separate referendum for school buses. It's usually 2, some years, every few years, it hits a cycle where we need 3 school buses. That will be the number that we'd be looking for the community to approve in 26, 27 in May. So there will be a referendum for a full-size 60-passenger bus and 2 36-passenger buses, cost of them at about $530,000. we, last year had a separate proposition for an electric bus. It failed in the Sequoia School District as it did across most school districts in New York State. At this point in time, the legislature in the state has approved or opened a waiver where we would not have to purchase a school bus, an electric school bus. In 27, 28, or 28, 29, we've applied for that waiver. So at this point, we are not going to go forward with a referendum for an electric school buses. The electric school buses cost about $420,000. So one of them, on top of even 2 diesel buses, would push this number, would have easily pushed that to about $800,000. In addition to the school bus referendum included in the regular budget, we've done capital outlay projects each year. They're built right into our regular operating budget. It's $100,000 transfer to the capital fund. And that's the maximum that you can do a capital outlay project for. We finished all of our interior doors at the middle school. This year, we are finishing all of our interior doors at the elementary school, so they will have, narrower windows. And they can much more difficult for an individual from outside the classroom to see in if there are people in the classroom. So we're moving that over to the high school for 26, 27. Ideally, we'll finish it in 26, 27, but likely $100,000 doesn't go as far as it once did. And we will probably do it again in 27, 28.
Now, based on the fact that we're short $1 million, the board can decide to hold on that and not spend that.
Yes, can do that. And we've done that in the past. Typically, last time we did it, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. It was when we started our last capital project because it factors into the tax levy limit. So I don't want to get into the details of it in any great detail, but right now it's costing us about $13,000. If we didn't do it, it would save us $100,000. That $100,000 would come off of our tax cap, and our tax cap at 2.94 would go to 1.94%. So cutting that out of the budget does not necessarily mean that we're going to realize more money. It shifts less of the cost to the tax.
And just another arbitrary question. I know we cannot use money from the capital project to fund our budget.
Right.
However, if it's money that wasn't spent, can that go into fund balance or reserve?
It goes into a debt service fund. Yeah, cannot go into the general fund. It sits over there, and it can only be used to retire debt. It cannot be used to pay for other costs of the general fund. So we're just starting that capital project. We're hoping that this summer there will be some work done through the energy performance contract side of it. We will do some borrowing, but it's 3 years out from where we are today to really know how much of that 15.7 million was approved will be expended on the items that were approved by the community. It's nothing that, even if we could do it in the short term, it wouldn't be a fix for us. We really can't.
So if we use more fund balance this year, we couldn't replenish it from the project.
Correct. But now,
Mr. Charlie, just to go back to the buses, the waiver that you said that we had, for the buses, is that something that had to get approved? If so, did it already get approved, or is there a certain date that it gets approved by?
it was submitted to the state in January. It has not, I don't know that it's been approved, Mr. State? I don't know that it's been approved. But based on the steps that we've taken, we've done a referendum, we did a facility electrification plan, I believe that's the term. So we've done some things through NYSERDA. We've got a roadmap to get there. Getting there just for the infrastructure needs of the district is substantial. And even with those infrastructure, if we had the infrastructure, we get it right, National Grid, right? National Grid would tell us, well, we can't send you the utility of electricity you need anyway. There are many issues with this that I think you hear from Albany regularly. Right now, it's not feasible. Something that still is on the governor's. Yeah, Ron?
On the buses too, can you explain what we get, you get money back from the state?
Yes.
So how, what's the percentage we get back from that 530?
About 85%, our aid ratio is around 90, and then,
Where's the other amount? How do we pay for the other amount?
so that figured into our tax levy
When it
limit
goes into the.
as a capital exclusion, yeah. So similar to a building project, bus purchases are factored in as well. Trying to keep it as level as we can. Bus costs are going up. Every now and then you hit where there's a 3 bus need. But we're able to keep that limit to 2.94 for 26, 27, which I was pleased with, I will say. I think when we did the project, voted on it in December, the message that I believe was, this project is not going to jump your taxes to a substantial amount. We less than 8%, but we figure we're starting at 2, and you figure what your tax, capital exclusion is, at 0.9% is basically what's being added on for capital project and bus increases, 26, 27.
I know we're early in the process. Now. This is because it comes. Yeah, it's not April. As far as the tax. 14% was $1 million, right? Increase, which obviously we would want to do. But. Going above. Do we need to go above, a little bit above the 2.9? Do we need to go to 5 this year? To lessen the stress of. Cutting other things, you know what I'm saying? That's the question, can we? Is the community?
Well,
Willing to work a little bit and increase it in, but then we have to pass it with a higher.
yeah, need to
So that there's good and bad around that. Thanks, just to put that out there.
Yeah, I would say.
What 5% would do to our budget, I know we usually come up with numbers that.
Yeah, a percent is $93,000.
You're right, so. 5%,
So 2% on.
Help us, not saying we would do that, but I think we need to have that option.
As Jim Van Worm used to say to me, that could be a spirited debate between the Board of Education. Yeah, that's what we make that decision. Hope I get my 2 cents in this. Capital outlay. Really, I've talked about everything that makes up the budget for 26, 27. Just some summarizing points, I guess. As we talked about state aid, 0%, 2%, 1% proposed for 26, 27. It is not keeping up with the increases to our expenditures. Special education, we had a good run for a few years, with it staying pretty stable. Maybe even lose a couple of kids. When I say lose a couple of kids, perhaps moved out of the school district, graduated, whatever the case may be. Our numbers declined a little bit. That's coming back the other way for 25, 26, thus the use of fund balance for this year primarily. And we have to anticipate that those kids will be here in 26, 27. So that's adding to our budget issue for 26, 27. Number 3 up here, you may have heard things going on in the federal government with regard to education. Do we expect? We at this time have not allowed for any reduction to funding for our Title I reading program or our IDEA grant funding for our special education programs, but that's typically about $400,000 a year. If that were reduced 25%, whatever the number may be, there's another $100,000 we would have to find it at some place. I've already talked about health insurance and our benefits. I had mentioned BOCE this Friday. I anticipate getting what our rates will be. I will plug those numbers in. That $1 million may go up to $1.1 million. It may go down to $975,000. I anticipate a 5% increase. We hope that that's enough, but we will see. And I also already talked about the reduction in interest rates, things along those lines. To summarize, we're at $1 billion deficit for 26, 27 at this point in time. We've been there before. Sometimes when we've been there before, we did not know all of the information that we know today. Retirements that we have, anticipated reductions in staffing based on class sizes. Only one teacher at this point in time, but we've already factored some of those things in. We hope to see greater increases to our state funding. If we do, I don't anticipate that really helping us out to a great extent. For 26, 27. So you take a look at what the limitations are from the state and their increases. And though the law doesn't say you can only raise your taxes to the tax levy limit, Governor Cuomo made that point many times. You can do whatever you want. You can get 60%, you can do whatever you want. You know, the fact of the matter is, for the vast majority of school districts that have tried to exceed the tax cap over the years since 11, 12, 12, 13, I believe it was when this first came into play, many times, most school districts are defeated when they try to exceed the tax cap. But particularly when that number is well above 2%, and if the community does not support some of the things that are going on. Very fortunate to have the community that we have that has supported the programs that were added in the 24-25 school year. Benefits. The programs that we have are increasing, but it seems that there's new costs every year, and we talked about this yesterday in the administrative council, that it seems that COVID has finally come home to roost, you know, and that's what's been talked about, all of the additional needs for kids that were isolated for a period of time, that are now 3, 4 years old, 5, 6 years old. The needs for speech, the needs for additional interventions just seem to continue to grow. And hard to convince a person who says, just looks at the dollars, what do you mean? But the fact is, what needs to be done for a lot of these kids costs money and is continuing to grow, and the support is not coming from the federal government or from New York State. And lastly, the conclusion in my mind from a business number is it's not sustainable to keep seeing minimal 2% or less increases in our major revenue sources, where we're going to see, in some cases, double-digit increases to some expenditure lines, and continue to add services to the kids in the school district, as well as programs, and have the school district that we have today. So that's not a conclusion that anybody wants to hear, and probably not one that a principal would deliver. Business manager would take that for what it's worth. Obviously, I look at things from a numbers perspective more so than a program, but in the end, if you don't have the money, things are going to get off a little bit ugly at some point in time. Any questions?
Can I go back to Mr. Critelli's comment earlier? If we got an increase in state aid, which most likely we will get politically, that 1% is probably going to go to 2.5 to 8%. Traditionally, it has, right?
2% this year, 0% the year before. So I don't know.
But it's also an election year.
Yeah, I think we get a little gap there. And to go back to what Ron suggested, right now we're at 14%, 14.1%. If the board were to decide to look at a 4 or 5%, we would have to show in good faith that we reduced the budget in certain areas to bring us down to that 5%. You with me?
I am.
So if we made some very difficult decisions, they may be heartbreaking, but we can salvage this year by making those decisions. With a little additional help from the state and some reductions in some of those areas, do we reach Ron's 5% and take a gamble?
You want a business manager's answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that $16 million is what I had budgeted. That was placed in there a month ago, before the governor released her budget. We're gonna get 2.5%, 3%. 16 million will attain that. Right now, if the budget were to pass, that 16 million would be $15.8 million. So if she gives a 2% more, maybe we'll get to 16 million. So we're, and I know danger on my part in putting that number there to start with, but I'm telling you right now, $16 million is a number that we are not going to get more of from New York State in just about any case for 26, 27. So any improvements got to be bottom line, other revenues potentially, but more likely reductions in some of these expenses.
Charlie, did
Well,
I?
that's what, I'm sorry, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they're not gonna be popular decisions, but if we went through every one of those categories and could reduce making heartbreaking decisions, we could get to where we're on is, I mean, arbitrarily a 4 or 5% increase rather than a 2%.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean. So we need $1 million if every time, let's say every percent is 100,000, it's 93,000, but let's say it's 100. You wanna get that to. We gotta find $800,000 and then we can go from 294 to 490. Oh, or it's still $800,000 of cuts, but it's not. It won't be easy.
Heartbreaking and unpopular are putting it extremely low.
You can get any number you want when you start cutting staff. I mean, you can get any number you want, it'll be a horrible thing to do, and that's not how you. But Tony, you could get any number you want. If you give people pay slips, that's not what we're talking about. Unfortunately, that's a very unpopular thing to do. I mean, you talk about 1% about 90 Gs, right?
I mean,
Okay,
simple.
So, or sports programs, etc., things of that nature. So 1%'s $90,000, okay. So that's, what's the average teacher shop, $60,000?
Yeah, say, let's say that's.
So that's just.
90 was
That's-
the benefit,
It's an ugly thought to think about.
but you're talking the lower end teachers, obviously, sir. Your newest teacher, yeah, I mean. Your high paid teachers.
Charlie, did I understand you correctly? If you go back a slide, you said 16 million, is that actually you being a little bit generous? Yeah. So we might even see a little bit more of a gap to me.
I'll say generous, I'll say aggressive on my part, for sure.
So that 1 million at the bottom, is that gonna reflect that additional generosity?
We're gonna hold that line at $16 million, I will say, you know. We'll deal with that, but unless it's $15.5 million, and it's like, can't deal with $500,000 out there. I can deal with 100,000, maybe, but not easily.
Well, yeah, well, 200, yeah, but still, it's gonna add to that number.
It could, or
Okay.
if the governor provides the funding that she's proposing for UTK, that could help us significantly.
Well, you mentioned that state aid number includes the UPK, so.
It does, the 16 million does. There's also some expenditures in our general fund budget, because the salaries have been moved out,
Okay,
but there are benefits for our UPK, proposed UPK staff. So if the governor says, we'll give you $10,000 a student, and you take 50, you bring 50 kids into your program, we'll give you $500,000, then you can fund the salaries, the benefits, the supplies, everything.
Okay.
So that would help us.
Good. thanks.
Anything more?
You don't think we'll lose that?
I don't know.
If it's already proposed, she's not gonna take away anything
She's
she
not.
proposed.
Right, but I don't know, there's, okay, you want more in foundation aid, where am I gonna get it? I don't know, I think that people believe pretty solidly that the UBK money's gonna stay, I think, maybe not,
We're optimistic.
yeah. It's a new one, or it's a significant bump, and when it comes to final negotiations, sometimes the new things are the first ones to take a backseat. Have a question still?
Yes, slide, so, it was the previous slide with, I don't know the slides, is teachers pay for their health insurance, or is it they pay money? Or is it school?
So the contract says, district pays a share of the health insurance and the staff pays a share of the health insurance. It's public knowledge, I think it's 13% individual, 20% family for our instructional staff, somewhere around there, somewhere around 10% for the individual, 20% for the family that the employee pays. And we pay the rest. Generally, it's taken from them through payroll deductions throughout the course of the year. We write the full check to the health insurance consortium. Our cost is around $4 million for health insurance. Districts, health and dental. No other questions, I'll turn this back over to the rest of the.
No.
All that? Good,
Thank you, Charlie.
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Stegman?
Subcommittee report.
Yes, sir.
So the School Boards Institute will be holding a, not necessarily a meeting, but kind of a workshop showcase for Herkimer Volsi program on March 26th. So that will be held at Herkimer Volsi. So if you're interested in the value and interested and available, a good opportunity to head over to Herkimer Volsi's and look at all the great things that they are doing in their program. And policy committee meeting, we intend to meet next month, and I'll send that information out to those subcommittee members.
Thank you, sir. How about superintendent's report?
Sure, as you can see, there's a reminder, the week we come back, February 25th, there's National Honor Society induction ceremony right here in the auditorium. Again, if you're interested and available, we will attend that. 2 board member seats available this year. Candidate petitions are available and due Monday, April 20th. To the board clerk, that will be Ms. Goodman, who's sitting down here in the front. So anyone interested can stop by the district office and pick up an application. If you are interested in becoming a board, there's a Zoom meeting titled How to Become a School Board of Education Candidate and What to Expect if Elected. And that will run on March 17th. So that's for prospective board members, just to give a little information on what that entails. And just to follow up on that, board members from Sequoia Valley, a board member will be voted to serve on the OHM BOCES Cooperative Board for a 3-year term. And that is our own board president, Mr. Nicotera. He will be up for election for the BOCES board. And before I get to the last one, I want to set your table. I think you have the sheet that's highlighted. So the BOCES annual board meeting is going to be held on April 1st. Last few years, we've had great participation and representation from our board. So if you're interested in attending, please let me or Ms. Goodman know, and we will mark it out. And we'll send out a reminder as the time nears to get your input. A couple sports updates. For the first one, I'd like to turn it over to student board member, Naomi Driver. Give us an update on the volleyball team.
Well, we got to the second game in sectionals and we lost, but it was a good game. I think it was like the best one we played all year. It's fun, very competitive.
So that was Friday night up in Beaver River. And then, as you said, it was the second. So Wednesday night, we hosted sectionals and they won that game. So again, very competitive games. Lots to be proud of from the girls varsity volleyball team. So congratulations on your sectional play. And the indoor track sectionals were held this past Saturday at Onondaga Community College. Our girls team placed 3rd, our boys team placed 4th. Wyatt Kimball from our boys team won the section 3 shot put championship. And then he and Hannah Miller from the girls team will both participate in state qualifiers this week in shot puts. Congratulations to those 2. And then the last item on the superintendent's report is our Pack the Pantry initiative. So that's the elementary school students are collecting food product that will benefit the Sequoia friends and neighbors, what ultimately really benefits our whole community. And to date, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Berger, but I think we've collected over 1,300 items so far.
We had 1,900 as a 4 o'clock there.
Okay, last couple of days, and that was
Today was double point. So I think there was 561 items that came in today.
that's awesome. And last year we collected over 2,000 items, so we're
Right.
basically that. So kudos to the elementary staff and students for.
Peanut butter and jelly. If Mr. Staten or Mr. Reed or Mr. Putnam are gonna buy donuts.
One of the teachers nominated us to have a little contest, so we appreciate that. Payback, that's all I can say. No, it's all fun. I'm sorry.
Peanut butter plus and jelly minus.
So again, kudos to the elementary staff for the Pack the Pantry initiative. And that was all for the superintendent's report.
Okay. Board of Education, we're looking for, let me see. Any old business items of concern? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our new business. And we're looking for your approval of 7.1 through 7.10. And I'll read them as follows. 7.1 is looking for your approval of the substitute teacher. 7.2 is looking for your approval of the resignation of a current bus driver. 7.3 is looking for your approval of the appointment of a mentor teacher. 7.4 is looking for your approval of the substitute teacher aide. 7.5 is looking for your approval of the minutes of our January 27th, 2026 meeting. 7.6 is looking for your approval of the treasurer's report dated January 31st, 2026. 7.7 is looking for your approval of a resolution authorizing payment of bills as approved by the claims auditor of the district. 7.8 is looking for your approval of the Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. 7.9 is looking for your approval of a teacher aide. And 7.10 is looking for your approval of a teacher aide. Does anyone have any questions or items of concern from what I read? If not, we have a motion to approve 7.1 through 7.10. Mr. Curtelli, second. I see a hand and okay, Mr. Collins. Any discussion? All in favor to approve 7.1 through 7.10. Anyone opposed? Thank you. We'll open the floor to public to be heard. Miscellaneous topics from board members, I'm sorry.
I think our student board member might have this one this time.
Okay,
Except for several lockings, we're gonna have a seminar instead, it'll be on March 7th, and we're still in the process of planning it. But it'll be a fun way for the students to interact, and it raises money for the student class. Again, it's just a fun way for us to interact, have fun, like outside of school.
So just to verify, the semi-formal, you will not be locked in that.
No.
very good. Okay, now we'll open up to the floor for public to be heard. And once again, I just want to reiterate, trust me when I say that we listen and we take everything into consideration from what we hear. We make decisions, but we make decisions based on what people share with us and the information that we receive. So we are listening, we are always welcome. We have some difficult decisions to make. And those decisions will be made, but in the meantime, we need to hear from our constituents. So please voice any concern that you may have, and we receive it and we welcome. Any words of wisdom? Yes, ma'am.
That was like, because it's shorter for everybody. I'll revert to the years. We think I'm a parent in the district, and I'm here to express serious concerns about putting Southern grade students. I understand the district's focus on sustainability and finances, but the proposal appears to be driven primarily by operational efficiency, not by what is developmentally appropriate for students. Seventh and eighth graders are at a critical stage of emotional and social development. Even with the 7th grade, placing students as young as 12 in a high school building raises unavoidable concerns about safety, supervision, and school climate. Shared buildings mean shared transitions, shared emergency procedures, and increased exposure to multiple students. A dedicated middle school also provides stability, belonging, and leadership opportunities that matter deeply at the age. Being the oldest students in a building builds confidence and engagement. Removing that environment in the name of efficiency comes at real cost to students. There are reasonable alternatives that deserve full consideration, such as keeping 7th and 8th grade in the middle school while sharing space with both. That's a viable option. If moving 5th and 6th grade is not feasible right now, then waiting is a responsible choice. Students should not be asked to absorb repeated transitions to solve logistical challenges. I'm also concerned about permanently giving up a middle school building. Once that flexibility is gone, it's extremely difficult to recover. That limits future options and locks the district into a decision that may not serve students long term. Finally, I want to emphasize that board members are entrusted to make decisions based on what's best for current students, regardless of whether their own children are still in these grades. That responsibility requires decisions grounded in child development, safety, and evidence, not convenience. I urge the board to pause this proposal, expand community engagement, and ensure that children, not finances, remain at the center of this decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Did you say you were gonna send us a copy of that too?
I'm gonna send you a little more detail.
Okay,
How would you like to receive that? Is that something you got?
you could send it to our clerk. To Mrs. Goodman,
Right, yeah.
and then she will distribute that to either through email or hard copy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. I see your hand. Mr. Steckel, second.
CJ.
CJ, is it familiar? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, the meeting is closed. We will go into executive session here.